Rob, it's great to have you with us. We can't wait to have you with us in Liverpool for your full State of the Industry address. But in the meantime, I shall hand the floor over to you and you can tell everyone a bit more about what they can look forward to in September.
Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate being here today. And I do have Michael Christensen on my end, on standby, because it is tough to cover the whole world. And I have to admit that I don't know everything about every facility in the world that's going on today. But my craft team has been doing great research, and we've compiled sort of uh, a teaser, if you will, for what's to come. So we'll get into that, but if we have time for Q&A at the end, then Michael can help maybe answer some questions that I may or may not be able to answer. So it's definitely a group effort, and they make me look better than I deserve. So yeah, I'm really pleased to be here, and can't wait to be with all of you in September. I think we're all looking forward to that, and the numbers are getting better for the most part, even despite some surges that are happening here and there. Overall, things are trending in a great direction, and definitely stateside, that's true, and we hope that the same holds true for Europe and the rest of the world. So, excuse me, so I'll just get into it. We basically got our teaser. We're going to cover a lot of things here in a short period of time, which is what we love to do, sort of leave them wanting more, as they say. So we've got a lot of things we want to cover, and it was great to hear about rugby and all the things happening with all the different sports, and I can't wait to have a chance to watch all those in more detail because it's definitely a changing environment out there. So just a little bit about us. So we are based primarily in Chicago. We do function worldwide and conduct market and financial feasibility analyses and impact studies, and also help manage projects on the pre-development side, before the construction starts, for both the facilities and the real estate districts, the neighborhoods, the precincts that surround these things. And so, and that's one of the huge trends that's happening. So we really say we do all the nerdy work for cool places, whether that's sports or any other use, but we absolutely have a love for sports venues. So on the design and build conference side, this is our second year presenting to the International State of the Industry. We obviously had some challenges last year, just a little bit. So we're doing two of them this year, this preview and then the full Monty down the line in September. And then I think this might be the fifth year that we're going to be doing it stateside, so focused mostly on North America, US and Canada primarily. So in terms of what we're talking about here, it's everything but North America. So, it's obviously a lot going on over there. But in terms of the rest of the world, it's a lot of territory to cover. There's more than 10 billion in international sports projects currently underway in the hopper, finishing up, and 6 billion in the past 3 years. This year, we have added arenas of over 15,000 seats to our database. So last year, we focused primarily on stadia, as well as Formula One and some cricket, primarily outdoor venues. And this year, we added indoor arenas, and there are plenty of those that we'll be talking about. We've just got some highlights on some new builds and major renovation profiles, super high level, again, just as teasers. Of course, the Olympics have been in the news again. Of course, what's been happening with Tokyo pushing back, and again, the ongoing challenge of what happens to these venues after the fact. We got a lot of things that we will be talking about in the fall about potential reusable venues or temporary venues. And of course, now the exciting news that Brisbane was awarded the games, the latest round of the summer games. So lots to talk about there. Entertainment districts, basically mixed use development districts surrounding the anchor of sports, is a big hot trend that we're covering. Esports is really trending all over the place, and it continues to become a major user of venues and sometimes an anchor tenant of venues, and of course, private equity investments. So we've been tracking that. So let's just get into it. So first off, we've tracked, I mean, this is South America, Europe, Africa, Asia, Oceania, everything. Includes over 400 stadiums and now more than 120 arenas, non-North America. So our criteria were football facilities of 50,000 plus, rugby of 50,000 plus, cricket of 35,000 plus, Formula One, and then 15,000 plus arenas, 15,000 plus capacity. So we got 120 of those now in the database. So there's a lot going on out there. And one of the great things we know to be true for arenas is that they are all weather. And so, in a lot of the world, it's either too hot or too cold or too inclement. And so these venues are not just great for sports, but also concerts and every other kind of event that you can imagine. So we're looking at these, and we are looking at the costs and trends of the 20 arenas that are currently under development or were recently opened. And then we utilize these stats and analytics to help you understand what's sort of on the cutting edge, so you can continue that cutting edge, bleeding edge in your project and sort of learn from the best. And do something even better on your end. But also we want to make projections of, how things are going for the future, because there are a lot of service providers in our industry that are always looking around to, hey, how can we help potential clients as they move into the new realm of development? So based on what we've already got going on, so it's only 2021 and we're already up to nearly 20 venues, both stadiums and arenas worldwide, that meet these criteria that we talked about, that, and we're just 2 years in, essentially, or not even a year and a half into this decade. So we project, you could see that there were about 50 plus in the last 2 decades. We believe that based on the trends, it's going to be at least 60 for this decade. So big times, notwithstanding some major cataclysmic event or two that seem to always occur every 10 years or so. Hopefully we won't have any more of those this decade. We shall see. So how about new builds and major renovations for stadia? So we've got the new San Siro in Milan, which actually has 2 clubs as their tenants. AC Milan, of course, is the one that most people have heard about, and the $1.25 billion. So that's a whole awesome district. If you look at their website, so speaking of mixed use districts, this is a whole campus. That is going to, is supposed to be for all kinds of events. And of course, with the Olympics coming up, those, will be participating in those as well. So there's a lot going on there, and I can't wait to dive deeper into that in the fall conference so that we can understand that better and get a perspective of it. Of course, we've got in Liverpool, so just down the road, we've got the new facility there at $500 million. In Qatar, we've got for the World Cup, we've got the iconic venue there, 640 million euros. And then the, which is commonly known as Motera now this is a renovation that's been underway. This is, look at this capacity, 132,000 people. So pretty unbelievable. But there's a lot of people in India. So, this is just one of those monster facilities that's been undergoing a big renovation, and it'll be great to look into that a little more deeply. But I mean, that's just an absolute monster. In terms of arenas, so we've got the new Coca-Cola arena in Dubai. The total cost, they don't do anything small time in Dubai, so that's probably a state secret, but our estimate is plus or minus 800 million, but could easily with FF&E and all the bells and whistles, certainly could go over $1 billion there. 17,000 capacity. Euros Live in Finland, a little bit smaller, 13.5, $500 million. A gorgeous design on the outside, for sure, and looking forward to getting into that more in the fall. Co-op Up Live in Manchester, a really large capacity arena, 23.5. And then, of course, the arena in Abu Dhabi at 18,000. So that's around $1 billion. So just small chump change there. So in terms of esports stats and trends, so just a little teaser tickler here. Esports viewership, as we all know, this is one of those industries that everybody's trying to figure it out, and I think we will be for a long time. There's so many kids and adults now, eyeballs glued to this stuff, but it's almost all done virtually. So the sort of the in-person experience is, everybody's trying to figure that out, but it is being developed around the world in terms of these venues that can host these, and they're basically like massive TV studios, right? We turn our venues into TV studios specifically for these events, and you got to have a serious bandwidth pipe for your internet. But this viewership is expected to grow at a 9% compounded annual growth rate, a CAGR, over the next, we're in the midst of this 4-year period, 454 million viewers in 2019. I think these numbers are conservative, especially during, what's happened during the pandemic. So many people sort of diving back into esports that maybe had a little extra time at home. And so the money that's flowing and the eyeballs that are watching has continued to increase. Huge investment increase up, basically tenfold, ninefold, up to $4.5 billion from 2017 to 2019. And then 1 billion per year in 2021. I would expect that that's a very conservative number. So we've got some esports venues in the hopper: Dundee, Scotland, Bristol, UK, Chongqing in China at 7,000, and the X Stadium in Dubai. We've also got one proposed in Toronto. We've got one in Philly. We've got the one in Arlington, Texas. So there's a lot going on there, and we'll be talking about that as we get into the fall to really understand, can you do a purpose-built venue like this that is financially feasible for the private sector, or is this something where it's a major use that also can accommodate other uses? For the most part, what we're seeing is existing facilities can get transformed into these esports venues, but it's not the only thing that's going on there. However, there are some, like the new one in Philly and some of these here and in Arlington, Texas, where that's the anchor tenant and that is sort of driving all the events. So we'll continue to look into that. Now, live, work, play, entertainment districts as part of venue development. So why does this make sense? We've talked about this at ALSD North America, and we've talked about this internationally a little bit. I think we teased about it a little bit last year. What we're seeing here is that these venues, of course, are extremely expensive to build, $1 billion plus or minus, and they don't always generate the cash flow to pay for that upfront expense or the ongoing cost. And so how does the public sector and the private sector, how do they all come together to make these things work? Well, if you're developing a real estate district, a mixed use district of bars and restaurants and residential and office and retail and every other use around there that benefits from having these masses of people coming, dozens and dozens and dozens of times per year to these venues, that creates a marketplace for the retail, for the restaurant. It's a great walkable amenity to have if you're a resident, if you're in an office building, any of those kinds of things. We'll see what happens with office in the next couple of years, but we sort of doubled down on our office, but we'll only be there 3 days a week. So we got bigger, but also be there 3 days a week. So everybody's doing that a little bit differently. But the key is that these heroes, these venues in the middle of these districts bring in the crowds. And then those help make the things around it super sustainable and economically feasible. Then the tax revenue that's generated off and other revenues that are generated off of these private developments in these districts can then flow back to supporting the capital development and ongoing operations of the what we call the hero in the middle, which is the venue or venues. So we've got a lot of examples of this. Mercedes-Platz has been there for a couple of years. We're just opening the T-Mobile district in San Juan, which is actually not outside of a sports venue, but outside of their convention venue. But that was completed last year. We'll be opening this year as COVID dies down. And then we've got more to look at here as well. So here I'm going to show you a video. Hopefully this will play and everybody will get to see it, but this will give you a sense, just a short video clip of one of these districts that's underway. So some pretty cool stuff, and we hope to show you more things like that this fall. You know, again, all of these investments are pretty cool. Oops, I got to move on. Okay, now let's go to Olympic cities. Okay, so we just had the big announcement about Brisbane for the 2032 Summer Games. Of course, LA in the 2028 Summer Games. Seemed like these all sort of snuck in. There were all these huge competitions for these cities to get the Olympics. You know, in the prior 10, 15, 20 years, it was always the biggest deal ever. And then I think as time went on and there were some changes at the IOC, it's been more of an interesting process and sort of has snuck these cities in that you just didn't really understand were even vying for it. But again, it's always such a pleasure to see the city that's going to be on the world stage. And I think, you know, LA's been on the world stage before, but for like Brisbane, what a great opportunity to showcase themselves and give people a glimpse. And of course, we've got Milan, which again has already got tons of facilities in the works, as we've discussed, and Paris, France coming up soon. So, and of course, we've got Tokyo this year as a COVID delay. Just some examples of cool COVID venues, or excuse me, COVID venues.
It's 11 o'clock.
These are Olympic venues, of course, and we'll be sort of taking a look at what becomes of some of these venues after the fact. A lot of sad stories there. And so everyone wants to figure out a way to make sure that these venues can either be temporary or they can be reused down the line. And we've been involved in that reuse of some of the Athens facilities from those games about 20 years ago, converting an arena, for example, into a conference center or a Congress center. We have seen we're actually involved in the aquatics venues for the LA games. And so we've done some studies there so that those will already be in use and be custom designed for water polo and other activities so that they will be sustainable as part of a public-private partnership before, during, and after the games. So those will be coming along soon. So all of these sort of financial aspects of it really have a lot to do with what gets developed. Then we've got the private equity investments. So, you know, one of the things that's, you know, historically it was the team owners and the leagues and the public sector trying to come together to figure these things out. But what we've seen happen is there have been a lot of private equity groups out there that have started to see sports as one of the last sort of unique content creators with a great fan base that really can't be replaced. So versus creating content through movies and TV or new products or technical or medical innovations or whatever, sports will always be fresh and new because it's constantly occurring. And there's a huge devoted fan base. And a lot of these have not been monetized and or packaged in a way that could be fully optimized. And so groups like Silver Lake and so many others are seeing sports as a way to really get into something and invest in it and optimize that brand experience that is authentically that. So we've heard, certainly Silver Lake has gotten involved as you've seen here. So for the All Blacks in New Zealand, that's sort of just been hitting the wires. We've got the City Football Group. We've got all kinds of things happening here that you can see. More than $4 billion invested since 2014. There are 3 dedicated sports investments funds just launched in the past 2 years with targets of over $1 billion. Arctos, Dial, and the Redbird series. But this is just and they're primarily focused on the clubs and the TV rights and those kinds of things. We're sort of excited that there should be, we believe, a trend to get these investments and investors who oftentimes have other major investors like sovereign wealth funds and that kind of thing to invest in the real estate development beyond the arena or stadium so that you're creating a sustainable district or mini city that everybody can really leverage that increase in asset value. Both the local community can be improved, and of course, there's a positive return for investors. So those are the kinds of things there. And I think for certain of these sports like rugby, which has in some ways a little bit smaller footprint, the opportunity there is to look at how that can be grown and optimized around the world. So that's where we are today, and we really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you today. And if anybody has questions or comments, hopefully I can answer those. But again, we'll have a deeper dive that I think will go close to an hour in the fall. So Katie, thanks again. And it's totally our fault, by the way, I think on the time issue. We discovered that. So Corey apologizes from our end, but at least we were ready an hour early and not an hour late. So
exactly. No, that was a great session there, Rob. Yeah, I suppose it was just one thing as I was, sort of watching it there. So obviously you're someone that deals with facts and figures and looking at trends. So probably over the last decade, everything's been getting bigger and better and more expensive. But obviously COVID sort of put a bit of a halt on all of that. So do you, and same for you, Mike, do you foresee the trend bigger, better, more expensive continuing? Or do you think we'll perhaps go back to, smaller venues, but that have a much bigger experience?
I think it's going to, honestly, I think it's going to be bigger and better. And one of the reasons is that, the whole notion of social distancing, I think a lot of people would love to have that in the rear view mirror, but I think the reality is that if you're a responsible designer of facilities these days, you're not going to be designing to pack in the masses at, a communal salad bar. You're going to be, designing much more what I would call a pre-function space, like your lobby experience and that sort of thing, your entry experience, so that so security is always going to be an issue, whether it's medical security, guns and bombs security, you name it. That has been a sad reality of our life. It seems every 10 years we're challenged with some new form of security that we have to design against. And so this time it's sort of medical, biological, and before it's guns and bombs. So, but that's just going to continue. So I think sort of the pre-function screening experience is going to have to be added. So that just adds space and time. But how do we keep the hassle factor minimized and engage fans so that while they're queuing to get in, that they're entertained? And so what kinds of brand and fan experiences can we engage them with as they're queuing in to get their temperature checks or gun checks or whatever it's going to be? I have to mention guns because we're in the US. Most places you guys don't have to worry about that. But either way, we've seen what happened in the UK. So, there's been all kinds of issues out there. So I just think that it's honestly going to challenge architects and owners to create a more just inclusive, larger experience that has to sort of mitigate these issues before they come into play. So I think once you're in the stands, you know, they will, hopefully that will still be that intensive experience where it's pretty tight. But I think getting into it, everyone will go through a bigger screening process, which means bigger pre-function areas. That's my sense of it.
Yeah. And what about you, Mike? Would you like to, is there anything that you wanted to add?
No, I would definitely agree with Rob on that. It's going to be sort of these larger pre-function spaces to deal with just increased security, medical, and being able to potentially create those revenue generating spaces is going to be the tricky part, and as Rob mentioned, a challenge for architects in the future.
And do you think, like you were saying, Rob, we're going to see more and more of these, you know, it's no longer going to be that you just go and build a new stadium or a new arena. You know, the developers, the stakeholders are going to have to look into an all-encompassing sort of sports and entertainment district.
You know, I do really think so for the most part. I think it's a matter of necessity, both financial and political, to the extent that the public sector is being asked to foot the bill for some of these things or a portion of it. You know, the local community is going to say, well, what's in it for us? If, you know, you see these billionaire owners of these sports franchises, if they get a stadium that they kick in some and the city kicks in some, or the community, you know, that's all well and good for them. But if you're not a fan of sport, then you may be a frustrated taxpayer. But if you know that this is developing other great things or fixing up a neighborhood around it that was a tough neighborhood, then that's, you know, hopefully for the most part, a really good thing for most stakeholders. And everybody sees, we call it sort of the Christmas tree effect, like everybody gets a present under that tree. And so I think politically and financially, that is the way of the future. And it's also community pride. Like, you don't just have the venue, you want to be able to show off that this is like our cool place.
Perfect. Well, that's great, Rob. Thank you so much to you and Mike for joining us there. We can't wait to see you in Liverpool this September. We'll be 6 months further down the line. So he's hoping there'll be, you know, sort of like we can go and have drinks in the bar, which will be a
100%. 100%.
All right. Well, thanks again, guys. And I'll see you in September.
All right. Sounds great. It was really enjoyable. Take care, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks, Katie. Bye-bye.
So everybody, we've come to the end of ALSD virtual. It was definitely one of, you know, an interesting day. We had 30 speakers, 7 panel sessions, covering a wide variety of topics and issues and all of that. So it's definitely, I think, got us all thinking, you know, about what is ahead of us. Obviously, the next 6 months is going to be somewhat challenging, but we got through the last 12 years, so I'm sure it won't be too bad. I just wanted to say, you know, thanks again to all of you for taking part. Huge thanks, obviously, to all our exhibitors and sponsors. And please do make sure to go and check out all the exhibitor and sponsor networking lounges. We're going to be leaving this microsite up and running probably until the end of May, so that, you know, as we sort of get the countdown to ALSD International in Liverpool this September, we can just keep that engagement there. So that's pretty much, you know, that's us done. That's the virtual event all done and dusted. Thanks again for joining us, and we can't wait to see you in Liverpool this September. So I'm signing out for now, and yeah, I'll see you all in Liverpool come September 6th and 7th, and thanks again for joining us today.